Hello and welcome back to All Booked Up. My name is Adrian and today we are doing a video where I am going to feel shame. So today we're doing a list of the most popular fantasy series that I have not read. And by not read, I mean I haven't even started. I have not even opened the first chapter and read a few words and decided I'm going to wait for another time. I mean, I've literally not even started these. So there are a few very popular series where I've read the first book and I've sort of delayed continuing, but they aren't making this list. This list is purely the most popular fantasy series that I can think of that I have not read a single word of. And you can all laugh at me and call me a fake fantasy reader for this list. So straight in at number 1 by George R.R. Martin is A Song of Ice and Fire. I have read literally not a word of this series, and that is kind of a little bit embarrassing. So for you fake fans like me out there, I have watched the first 4 seasons, I believe, of A Game of Thrones, the TV show. My wife absolutely loved A Game of Thrones and has watched all of the seasons. I enjoyed it when I watched it, but it wasn't really for me. I have not, however, even thought about really dipping into this series. From what I saw from the TV series, it was fine. I think I would probably enjoy it enough, but it's just not high on my TBR, especially if George R.R. Martin is not actually going to be really continuing the series, continuing to write and continuing to finish the series. It's definitely not high on my priority list right now, even though that is quite embarrassing for someone who claims to be a fantasy reader. Up next is another series with a recent TV adaptation, and that is The Witcher series by Andrzej Sapkowski. I've probably pronounced that wrong. I have not even read any of the short stories. I've not started this series whatsoever. I did play a bit of The Witcher video game, the first one, and it was good fun. I quite enjoyed it. But I've never really continued from there. I have seen most of the first season on Netflix. I did enjoy that. I think the character of Geralt was portrayed really well. I really enjoyed him as a character. But yeah, I have not started this series at all. And again, this one is one that is not particularly high on my TBR. I would like to get around to it at some point, but this is definitely not high priority for me. I know a lot of people love this series. I know a few different booktubers who I follow who aren't massive fans. So I know Bookborn, who doesn't particularly love what she's read so far and has some issues with that. You should go and check out her videos on that. And I know Angela from Literature Science Alliance is sort of going through the audio of some of the later books in this series, and she seems to be enjoying it, but is going through them quite slowly. Again, I would love to get around to these at some point, but they're definitely not high priority on my list. Now we're getting into some of the slightly less popular but still big names in fantasy, but these are ones which are higher on my TBR. These are definitely higher priority for me. So the first one of these is going to be The Gentleman Bastards by Scott Lynch. So that would be starting with The Lies of Locke Lamora. So yeah, obviously I've not read any of this series yet, but it is a high priority series for me. I am really looking to get to The Lies of Locke Lamora at least by May, June time. And I really do think that from what I have heard from people like Klaus at The Contrarian, I know Murphy Napier absolutely adores this series as well. From what I've heard from these people, I think I will really enjoy it. I am looking forward to that found family friendship aspect of it that people talk about so much, and it does just sound like good fun. I kind of am stoked for Red Seas Under Red Skies as well, which is the second book, I believe. After having seen Michael Nipp's review for that book, I am really excited to get to that as well and see how I feel about it. So yeah, this is the first of the really top priority for me, but I have not read any of this series yet. Next series that is high priority for me, and this is a series that people rave about, and it's an author that people rave about, and this is The First Law by Joe Abercrombie. I have not read a single word written by Joe Abercrombie, and this will be forever to my shame until I have resolved that. I know so many people absolutely adore him. I know Joanna's recently done a review of the First Law trilogy, and she really enjoyed it. It was a very interesting review and made me much more excited to pick this up. Again, I know Klaus has this on his top 10. It's a series that I think is a series I really don't know whether I will love or not. It has lots of the hallmarks of things that I think I would really enjoy. I'm also a little bit nervous about the grimdark elements of it. The most grimdark fantasy I've read currently is probably the Poppy War trilogy. So I'm not quite sure how I will cope with Lord Grimdark himself, but I definitely need to give it a go. And really, I am planning to not just read The Blade itself, but I'm planning to at least read the second book as well, because I know that people say that there is a real good progression through that series, and that actually The Blade itself is definitely the weakest of Abercrombie's books. So when I do get to it, I am definitely going to be willing to push through the first book no matter what, and at least give it till the second book to see if this series grabs me or not. Next up is a BookTube darling. It is the counterpart in many ways to my favourite series of all time. My favourite series of all time currently being The Wheel of Time. This is the other big boy behemoth fantasy series that takes a very, very different approach, and that is Malazan, Book of the Fallen. And yes, I am going to say Malazan because that sounds like a reasonable name, unlike Malazan. Malazan? What's that? It's Malazan. Malazan, Book of the Fallen. This is one that I am actually very excited to, but I can't see me getting to anytime soon. I only finished up The Wheel of Time in February, and that was a commitment. That was a really big commitment for me. It took me almost a year to get through the entirety of that series, and I am enjoying having a break from the multi-book chunking series to get through. So at some point in 2022, I can see myself attacking Malazan, Book of the Fallen by Stephen Erickson. Again, I'm going to at least give it a couple of books to see how I feel before I make a decision as to whether I continue or whether I leave it there. And my final series I want to talk about here is the critically renowned series on this list, really. It is the 3-time Hugo Award-winning series, and that is the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. Now, this series really is something I've heard many, many great things about. My sister-in-law has been reading it and loves it. Obviously, this is, for certain parts of BookTube, is an absolute darling. People adore this. And I've heard that the narrative style and the narrative choices that N.K. Jemisin make are really, really interesting. In many ways, it sounds to me at least like it's going to be a little bit more literary. Definitely also with some grimdark undertones by the sounds of it. Again, I don't know too much about it. This, I do have the 5th season already, the first book of this, but I have not yet started it. Again, this I am intending to get to at some point this year. And they are the 6, to my shame, very, very popular fantasy series that I have currently not read one single word from. I hope that you don't find this a horrific video and decide to unsubscribe. I hope that you realise how embarrassing this is a little bit for me as someone who likes to consider themselves a fantasy reader, that I have not touched any of these series before. But I am hoping in the near future to get to Gentleman Bastards, to get to the First Law, to get to Malazan, although that will probably be next year, and at some point this year also to get to Broken Earth. I really do want to give these a try. I think they are books that I could really, really enjoy. The Witcher and A Song of Ice and Fire, I'm much lower down my priority list. So there you go. Ridicule me as much as you like in the comments. Share in my shame and my embarrassment. If you like the video, don't forget to click like, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications, and I will see you again soon.